My heart raced when I saw my name on the yellowed letter, Claire Whitmore. The date made my blood run cold, 1952, 23 years before I was born. Was someone waiting for me decades before I came into this world? Claire Whitmore arrived at her late aunt's house in Vermont on a gray October day, the kind of day that matched the hollow feeling in her chest. The Victorian mansion loomed before her like a monument to memories she'd never been part of. Margaret Whitmore had raised her, yes, but they'd been strangers sharing the same last name, connected by duty rather than love. The house felt like a mausoleum as she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, dust motes dancing in the pale afternoon light. Behind a forgotten armoire, she found an old cedar chest, its brass corners tarnished with age and neglect. Inside, beneath yellowed photographs of stern-faced relatives and moth-eaten quilts, Claire discovered a bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon. Her heart stopped when she read the first envelope in the dim light. Miss Claire Whitmore, Millbrook, Vermont, 1952. The handwriting was masculine, confident, passionate. She opened the first letter with trembling hands, and the words made her world tilt. My dearest Claire, I cannot live another day without telling you how deeply, desperately I love you. You are my heart, my soul, my reason for breathing. But this was impossible. The postmark clearly showed 1952, 23 years before she was even born. Cliffhanger. Why would someone write passionate love letters to a woman with my exact name decades before I existed? Claire Elizabeth Whitmore was a woman who controlled every aspect of her existence with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. At 35, she was one of Boston's most successful corporate lawyers, with a corner office that overlooked the harbor, a wardrobe of perfectly tailored suits, and a 5-year plan that accounted for every promotion, every investment, every carefully calculated step toward partnership. She lived in a pristine downtown condominium where everything had its place, maintained a small circle of equally ambitious friends, and hadn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. Her life was efficient, predictable, and entirely under her control, exactly the way she liked it. The phone call about Margaret Whitmore's sudden death had been the first crack in Claire's perfectly ordered world. Margaret had been the woman who raised her after her parents died in that terrible car accident when Claire was 8 years old. But calling Margaret a mother figure felt like a stretch. She'd been more like a distant guardian, formal and proper, providing for Claire's physical needs while maintaining an emotional distance that never quite made sense. Their relationship had grown even more strained over the years, reduced to obligatory Christmas cards and brief, awkward phone calls on birthdays. Claire had often wondered if Margaret resented having to raise someone else's child, if she'd seen Claire a burden rather than a blessing. Now, standing in the sprawling Vermont house she'd unexpectedly inherited, Claire felt completely unmoored. The place was a time capsule from the 1950s, doilies on every surface, faded floral wallpaper, and photographs of stern-faced people she didn't recognize staring down from the walls. The persistent scent of lavender sachets and old wood polish made her feel like she was trespassing in someone else's life. She'd driven up from Boston, planning to spend one weekend clearing out the essentials and putting the house on the market as quickly as possible. The discovery of the letters changed everything. Each envelope bore her name in the same confident, masculine script. Each letter spoke of desperate love, secret meetings, and passionate longing that made her cheeks burn as she read. The mysterious author signed them simply W and wrote as if he knew her intimately, as if they shared secrets and promises that made Claire's organized heart with unfamiliar emotions. For the first time in her meticulously planned life, Claire Whitmore had no idea what to do next. The Millbrook Public Library was housed in a red brick building that looked like it hadn't changed since the Eisenhower administration. Claire pushed through the heavy oak doors, breathing in the familiar scent of old books, lemon oil, and the peculiar mustiness that seemed to permeate every small-town library she'd ever visited. The interior was exactly what she'd expected: high ceilings, tall windows that let in streams of golden afternoon light, and shelves packed with books that probably hadn't been checked out since the Clinton administration. What she hadn't expected was the man behind the reference desk. "Can I help you find something?" His voice was warm and cultured, with just a hint of curiosity that made her look up from the card catalog she'd been pretending to study. Claire found herself staring into the most beautiful brown eyes she'd ever seen, the kind of brown that reminded her of expensive coffee and autumn leaves. The man was tall and lean, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it while reading, and a smile that was both welcoming and slightly mischievous. He wore a navy sweater that brought out the color of his eyes, and jeans that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin in a way that Claire envied. "I'm researching some local history," she managed, suddenly hyper-aware of how she must look after driving 3 hours and then climbing around in a dusty attic. Her usually perfect hair was escaping its ponytail, she wasn't wearing any makeup, and her clothes were wrinkled from the long drive. "Theo Carter," he said, extending a hand that was warm and slightly rough, like someone who worked with his hands as well as his mind. "And you must be Claire Whitmore. Word travels fast in a town this size, especially when someone as beautiful as you arrives asking questions about the past." The compliment caught her completely off guard. Claire was used to being called smart, capable, efficient, but beautiful? And from a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine for ruggedly handsome academics? She felt heat rise in her cheeks and cursed her fair complexion for betraying her every emotion. "How did you know who I was?" she asked, trying to regain her professional composure. "Margaret Whitmore was something of a local legend," Theo said, his expression growing more serious. "Everyone knew she'd inherited her father's house and had raised a niece who'd gone on to become a successful lawyer in Boston. When we heard she'd passed away, we all wondered if you'd come back to settle the estate." "I found some old letters in the house," Claire said, deciding to be direct. "They're addressed to someone with my name, but they're from the 1950s. Something flickered in Theo's eyes. Recognition? Concern? Interest? "Letters can tell us a lot about the past," he said carefully. "The Whitmore family has very deep roots in this community. Your great-grandfather built the first mill here, and your family has always been prominent in local affairs." Claire pulled one of the letters from her purse, keeping it folded so he couldn't read the intimate contents. "These aren't business correspondence or family letters. They're personal, very personal. Love letters." Theo's expression grew thoughtful as he studied the envelope she showed him. "That's definitely local paper stock from the era, and the handwriting looks familiar, though I can't place it immediately. Would you like me to help you research this? I have access to genealogy records, newspaper archives, even some private family collections that might shed light on what you found." "Why would you want to help a stranger?" "Because you're not really a stranger, are you? You're Margaret Whitmore's niece, which makes you part of this community's story whether you know it or not. And because," he smiled that devastating smile again, "solving historical mysteries is kind of my specialty. Plus, I have to admit, I'm curious about what secrets the Whitmore family might have been keeping all these years." Over the next 4 days, Claire found herself practically living at the library. Theo had set up a corner table in the local history section where they could spread out documents, photographs, and the growing collection of letters without disturbing the few other patrons who wandered through the quiet building. The letters painted an increasingly complex picture of a passionate but troubled romance. W wrote about stolen moments in the old mill after closing time, secret meetings in the woods behind the Whitmore farm, and the constant fear of discovery. The Claire of 1952 never wrote back. At least, her letters weren't in the collection. But W's responses suggested a woman who was deeply in love but torn between passion and duty, between what her heart wanted and what society expected. "Your family owned half the county back then," Theo explained as they pored over old property maps and newspaper clippings. His shoulder brushed against hers as he leaned over to point out landmarks, and Claire found herself acutely aware of his warmth, the subtle scent of his cologne mixed with old books and coffee. The Whitmores had the largest farm, plus they owned the general store, the grain mill, and held mortgages on most of the smaller properties. Very respectable, very traditional, very concerned with maintaining their reputation in the community. Claire found herself studying Theo's profile as he read, noticing the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated, how his long fingers handled the delicate old papers with infinite care, the way he unconsciously pushed his dark hair back from his forehead when he was thinking. She'd never been attracted to the academic type. Her usual taste ran more toward ambitious businessmen in expensive suits who understood the language of contracts and corporate acquisitions. But there was something about Theo's quiet intelligence, his genuine fascination with history and human stories, that drew her in despite herself. They had lunch at Miller's Diner, the town's only restaurant, a place with red vinyl booths and comfort food that reminded Claire of her childhood before her parents died. Theo told her about his work as a freelance historian and researcher, how he'd left a tenure-track position at Dartmouth to come back to Millbrook and care for his aging grandfather. Claire found herself opening up about her carefully controlled life in Boston, her workaholic tendencies, her growing sense that despite all her professional success, something essential was missing from her existence. "You're not what I expected," Theo said over coffee and pie that was probably homemade that morning. "What did you expect?" "Someone colder, I suppose. More corporate. But you're passionate about solving this mystery. It's like watching someone discover a part of themselves they didn't know existed." The observation hit closer to home than Claire cared to admit. She was passionate about this, more than she'd been about anything in years, maybe ever. The mystery was awakening something in her that her legal work never had, a sense of connection to something larger than quarterly reports and client acquisitions. That evening, alone in Margaret's house, Claire made another discovery. While looking for a place to put the letters safely, she found a loose floorboard in the bedroom closet. Underneath was a small metal box containing more letters, but these were different, more recent, from 1953, and the tone had changed dramatically. "My dearest Claire," she read by lamplight, her hands trembling slightly, "I cannot bear this silence any longer. It has been 3 months since I've heard from you, and I'm going mad with worry and confusion. The secret we share grows heavier each day, and I know you must be frightened about the child. Whatever you decide, whatever you think is best, I will support you completely. But we must talk, my darling. We cannot continue as we are, with the whole town watching and wondering. Your father grows more suspicious each day, and my own family is asking questions I don't know how to answer. Please, write to me. Tell me what you want to do. Tell me how I can help you through this. All my love, always and forever, W." Claire read the letter 3 times before the full implications sank in. The Claire of 1952 hadn't just been having a secret romance, she'd been pregnant. And judging by the desperate tone of this letter, something had gone terribly wrong. She searched through the rest of the box with growing urgency, finding letters that grew increasingly frantic and then stopped abruptly in December 1953. The final letter was heartbreaking in its desperation. "Claire, I've tried every way I can think of to reach you. I've written dozens of letters, tried to visit the house, even asked your cousin Martha if she knew where you'd gone. Everyone tells me you left town suddenly, that you decided to start fresh somewhere new. But I cannot believe you would leave without a word, without giving me a chance to explain, to make things right. If you're reading this, if you ever come back, please know that I never stopped loving you. I never stopped looking for you. I would have married you in a heartbeat, baby or no baby, scandal or no scandal. I hope wherever you are, you're happy. I hope you know that our love was real, even if everything else fell apart. Forever yours, William." Cliffhanger. The mysterious Claire had been pregnant, had disappeared suddenly, and the man who loved her had never known what happened to her, or to their child. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat at Margaret's kitchen table with the letters spread out before her like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite solve, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint the Vermont mountains in shades of gold and pink. The pregnancy letter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, not just because of what it revealed about the past, but because of what it might mean for her own story. She was back at the library when Theo arrived at 9 o'clock, the pregnancy letter clutched in her hand and dark circles under her eyes betraying her sleepless night. "I need to see birth records from 1953, she said without preamble, her voice tight with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Theo took one look at her face and didn't ask questions. He led her to the genealogy section and pulled out the heavy ledgers that recorded the vital statistics of Millbrook's residents going back to the town's founding. "What exactly are we looking for?" he asked gently as they opened the 1953 birth records. "A baby, born to Claire Whitmore." They searched methodically through the handwritten entries, and there it was, in black ink that had faded to brown over the decades. Claire Margaret Whitmore, born March 15, 1953. Mother, Claire Elizabeth Whitmore. Father, unknown. Claire stared at the page, her mind racing. "Margaret, that was my aunt's name." "Claire," Theo said softly, "what if the woman you called your aunt wasn't your aunt at all?" The question hung in the air between them like a live wire. Claire felt the room spinning slightly, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "What are you saying?" "What if Margaret Whitmore was your grandmother? What if the Claire who received these letters, the Claire who was pregnant in 1953, was your mother?" The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. Margaret had always been formal with her, distant in a way that Claire had attributed to grief over her brother's death, the brother who was supposedly Claire's father. But what if there had been no brother? What if Margaret had been hiding a much more complicated truth? "The car accident," Claire whispered. "Margaret told me my parents died in a car accident in Boston when I was 8. She showed me newspaper clippings." "Small towns are very good at creating convenient stories to protect their own," Theo said carefully, "especially when the truth might bring shame to prominent families." Claire felt her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "But then, where is she? Where is my real mother?" They searched death records, marriage records, anything that might give them a clue about what had happened to Claire Elizabeth Whitmore after that baby was born in March 1953. But there was nothing. No death certificate, no marriage license, no forwarding address. It was as if she had simply vanished from the official record. "She left," Theo said quietly, his voice full of sympathy. "Your mother left town, probably to avoid the scandal of being an unwed mother, and Margaret raised you as her own. But why would she tell me my parents were dead? Why create such an elaborate lie? Because in 1953, being an unwed mother was social suicide, especially for a family like yours. It would have ruined your mother's reputation and potentially yours as well. Margaret was protecting both of you the only way she knew how." Claire's eyes narrowed as she studied Theo's face. There was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition or knowledge that he was trying to hide. "You know more than you're telling me." "What do you mean?" "The way you looked when I first mentioned the letters, the way you've been so eager to help. You recognized something, didn't you?" Theo was quiet for a long moment, his internal struggle visible on his face. "My family has lived in Millbrook for 4 generations. Sometimes old family stories intersect in ways that are complicated." "Theo," Claire's voice had taken on the sharp edge she used in depositions when she sensed a witness was being evasive. "Who is W?" He sighed deeply, running his hand through his hair. "I think W stands for William Carter." The name hit Claire like a physical blow. "Carter? As in your last name?" "He was my grandfather." The library fell completely silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and the sound of Claire's heart pounding in her ears. She stared at Theo, feeling a mixture of betrayal, confusion, and anger rising in her chest. "Your grandfather was my mother's lover." "Yes, the man who got her pregnant and then abandoned her?" "That's not what happened," Theo said quickly. "He didn't abandon her. He didn't even know she was pregnant. And you've known this the entire time?" "I suspected it when you first mentioned finding letters addressed to Claire Whitmore. When you described the handwriting, the time period, I wondered. but I wasn't sure until we found the birth records." Claire stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. "You've been lying to me. This whole time, you've been lying by omission." "I haven't lied to you. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know what you could handle." "You didn't think I could handle the truth?" "I was trying to protect you." "From what? From the truth about my own life? From potentially devastating information that might not even be accurate. I wanted to be sure before I said anything." Claire felt tears burning behind her eyes, and she hated herself for the weakness. "I trusted you. I thought you were helping me because you cared about uncovering the truth. But you were just trying to protect your family's reputation, weren't you?" "No, Claire, that's not—" "Your grandfather seduced my mother and then abandoned her when she needed him most. She had to leave town in disgrace, give up her child, start over with nothing. And you've been sitting here helping me solve the mystery while knowing exactly what happened all along. You don't understand. My grandfather loved your mother. He searched for her for years after she disappeared. He never married, never had children of his own because he never got over losing her. How convenient for him. How noble." Claire's voice was dripping with sarcasm. "And meanwhile, my mother was raising someone else's child and living with the shame of what he did to her." "That's not what happened," Theo said desperately, rising from his chair. "There's more to the story. There are things you don't know." "I don't want to hear any more of your family's excuses," Claire said. "I trusted you, and you betrayed that trust, just like your grandfather betrayed my mother." "Claire, please don't leave like this. Let me explain." But she was already gone, the heavy library door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed through the quiet building like a gunshot. Claire spent the next 3 days avoiding the library, the town center, and anywhere else she might run into Theo. She threw herself into searching Margaret's house with a desperate intensity, looking for more clues about her mother's life, more pieces of the puzzle that might help her understand how her entire existence had been built on lies. In the basement, behind a stack of Christmas decorations that looked like they hadn't been disturbed in decades, she found an old steamer trunk. Inside were baby clothes, tiny dresses and sweaters that were clearly handmade, booties so small they could fit in Claire's palm, and a christening gown of white lace that was yellowed with age. At the bottom of the trunk was a manila envelope containing photographs and documents that confirmed her worst fears. There was a birth certificate, her real birth certificate, listing her as Claire Margaret Whitmore, born to Claire Elizabeth Whitmore, age 19, father unknown. There were hospital records from Burlington, 40 miles away, documenting a difficult labor and a young mother who held her baby for exactly 1 hour before releasing her to Margaret Whitmore's custody. And there were photographs, dozens of them, showing a young woman who looked exactly like Claire, holding a baby with the same dark hair and serious expression. The most devastating discovery was a handwritten note in her mother's careful script. "For my daughter, if she ever wants to know. I gave you to Mother not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you too much to let you carry the burden of my shame. I hope you have a beautiful life, full of all the things I couldn't give you. I think of you every day. Love always, your mother." Claire sat on the basement floor surrounded by the evidence of her true parentage and cried until she had no tears left. Everything she thought she knew about herself was a lie. Her name, her family history, her understanding of where she came from, all of it fabricated to protect the reputation of people who were already dead. The knock on her front door came just as the sun was setting on her 3rd day of self-imposed isolation. Claire opened it to find Theo standing on the porch, his hair disheveled and his eyes pleading. "We need to talk," he said. "I think we've said everything we need to say." "No, we haven't, not even close. Please, Claire, give me 5 minutes to explain." Against her better judgment, she stepped aside and let him into the house. They stood in the living room, the space between them feeling like a chasm that had opened up and swallowed all the warmth and connection they'd built over the past week. My grandfather died when I was 15, Theo began, his voice steady but strained. But before he died, he told me about the great love of his life, a woman named Claire Whitmore, who he'd loved and lost, who had disappeared from his life without explanation. He said she was the most beautiful, intelligent, passionate woman he'd ever met, and that losing her had broken his heart in ways that never healed. How touching, Claire said sarcastically. I'm sure it was very romantic, pining for the woman whose life he ruined. He didn't ruin her life. He didn't even know about the pregnancy until years later, and by then, it was too late to do anything about it. How convenient that he didn't know. How did he find out exactly? When I was in college, studying local history, I came across some old records that mentioned the birth. I was researching genealogy for a class project, and I saw the name Claire Whitmore listed as an unwed mother in 1953. I knew that was the name of the woman my grandfather had loved, so I told him what I'd found. And what did he do with that information? He cried, Theo said simply. He sat in his chair and cried like I'd never seen a man cry. Then he told me the whole story, how they'd fallen in love, how they'd planned to marry, how she'd disappeared without a word. He'd spent 30 years wondering what he'd done wrong, why she'd left him. Learning about the baby explained everything and made it so much worse. Because he realized he'd abandoned his own child? Because he realized someone had kept them apart deliberately. Your grandmother, Claire. Margaret Whitmore intercepted their letters, spread lies about both of them, made sure they never found each other. Claire felt something cold settle in her stomach. What are you talking about? My grandfather tried to contact your mother for months after she disappeared. He wrote dozens of letters, tried to visit the house, even hired a private investigator. But Margaret told everyone that your mother had run away with another man, that she'd never truly loved William. And she told your mother, Theo paused, seeming to gather courage, she told your mother that William had rejected her, that he was engaged to someone else. You're lying. I'm not. I found the letters, Claire, all of them. The ones he wrote to her that were returned unopened, the ones she wrote to him that he never received. Margaret kept them all, probably as insurance, probably to make sure the truth never came out. Claire sank into Margaret's old armchair, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath her feet yet again. Where are these letters now? At my house. I've been afraid to show them to you because I knew how much they would hurt. But you deserve to know the truth, even if it's painful. And what is the truth, Theo? What really happened between your grandfather and my mother? They loved each other. Desperately, completely, the kind of love that comes along once in a lifetime if you're lucky. They were planning to marry in the fall of 1952, but William's father sent him to Boston on business for 3 months. While he was gone, your mother discovered she was pregnant. She wrote to tell him, but Margaret intercepted the letters. She told your mother that William had abandoned her, and she told William when he returned that your mother had run away with someone else. So they were both lied to. Yes. And they both spent the rest of their lives believing they'd been betrayed by the person they loved most. Claire closed her eyes, trying to process this new version of events. Your grandfather never married? Never. He said no one could compare to your mother. He died alone, still loving a woman he thought had chosen someone else over him. And my mother? I don't know what happened to her after she left Millbrook, but I'd like to help you find out, if you'll let me. Claire opened her eyes and looked at Theo, really looked at him. She saw the sincerity in his expression, the pain he felt for both their families' suffering, the genuine care he had for her. But she also saw the resemblance to the man in the old photographs she'd found, the man who had been part of the tragedy that shaped her mother's life. I don't know if I can trust you, she said quietly. Every time I think I understand what's happening, I find out there's another layer of deception, another secret that changes everything. I understand why you feel that way. I should have told you about my grandfather from the beginning. I was scared of how you'd react, scared that you'd blame me for something that happened before either of us was born, scared that I'd lose you before I even had a chance to know you. Lose me? I'm falling in love with you, Claire. I have been since the moment you walked into the library. And I know the timing is terrible. I know this situation is complicated beyond belief, but I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel." Claire stared at him, her heart pounding. "You're falling in love with me? I know it sounds crazy. I know we barely know each other, and I know I've handled this whole situation badly. But yes, I'm falling in love with you, and I don't want to make the same mistakes our families made. I don't want to let pride or fear or other people's lies keep us apart." "Theo," Claire felt tears threatening again, "I don't know what I feel anymore. A week ago, I thought I knew who I was, where I came from, what my life meant. Now I find out everything was a lie, and I'm supposed to just, what, fall into your arms and pretend none of this matters? I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I'm asking you to give us a chance to find out what this could be, without the weight of our family's mistakes crushing us before we even begin." Claire stood up, needing distance to think clearly. "I need time. I need to figure out who I am now that I know the truth about my past. I need to find out what happened to my mother, whether she's still alive, whether there's any chance of understanding her choices. I can't think about love or relationships or any of that until I know where I came from. Then let me help you find those answers. I think I need to do this alone." The words hung between them like a wall, and Claire saw the pain flash across Theo's face before he carefully composed his expression. "If that's what you need," he said quietly. "But Claire, the offer stands. Whenever you're ready, whatever you need, I'm here." After he left, Claire sat in the growing darkness of Margaret's living room and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning brought another discovery that would reshape everything Claire thought she understood about her family's story. While cleaning out Margaret's bedroom, she found a loose floorboard beneath the vanity table. Hidden underneath was a leather-bound diary, its pages filled with Margaret's careful handwriting chronicling the events of 1952 and 1953. Claire sat on the bedroom floor and read her grandmother's version of events, feeling like she was witnessing a tragedy unfold in slow motion. March 1952. "Claire has been acting strangely lately. She's always been a dreamy girl, too romantic for her own good, but now there's something different about her. She hums while she does her chores, and I've caught her staring out the window with a smile I don't recognize. I suspect there's a young man involved, though she hasn't confided in me. I must keep a closer eye on her." May 1952. My suspicions were correct. I discovered Claire has been meeting secretly with William Carter, that boy from the Mill family. They think they're being discreet, but in a town this size, nothing stays secret for long. The Carters are respectable enough, I suppose, but they're not our social equals. More importantly, William is too young, too impulsive. He'll break her heart or ruin her reputation, possibly both. August 1952. Claire came to me today with stars in her eyes, claiming William has proposed and they plan to marry in the fall. I told her absolutely not. She's only 18, far too young to know her own mind. Besides, William's father has plans to send him to Boston to learn the family's business interests there. A few months apart will cool this infatuation, mark my words. October 1952. William left for Boston this morning. Claire moped about the house for 3 days, acting as though the world had ended. Young love is so dramatic, so wasteful of energy. She'll thank me for this intervention when she's older and realizes how foolish she was being. December 1952. Claire received several letters from Boston, which I've been intercepting. William's handwriting is passionate enough to turn any young girl's head, full of promises and declarations that would be touching if they weren't so impractical. I've told Claire that William hasn't written at all, that he's clearly forgotten her in the excitement of city life. She cried, but she's beginning to accept the truth of the situation. March 1953. Disaster. Claire came to me this morning in tears, confessing that she's with child. The foolish girl claims it happened before William left, during one of their secret meetings. She's been hiding it for months with loose clothing and careful positioning, but she can't hide it much longer. The whole town will know soon. I've made arrangements for her to go stay with my sister in Burlington until the baby comes. We'll tell people she's visiting family, perhaps learning some domestic skills. No one need know the truth. April 1953. Claire is being impossibly stubborn about this situation. She insists that William loves her, that he'll marry her when he returns from Boston. She's written him several letters about the pregnancy, which I've intercepted and destroyed. The foolish child doesn't understand that this knowledge would ruin both their lives. William's family would never accept a wife who came to marriage already carrying a child, and our family's reputation would be destroyed. I've told her that William has become engaged to a banker's daughter in Boston, that he never truly loved her. It's a kind lie, much kinder than the truth would be. May 1953. The baby was born yesterday at Burlington General Hospital. A girl, healthy and beautiful, with Claire's dark hair and serious expression. Claire held her for exactly 1 hour, crying the entire time, then handed her to me with instructions that I was never to tell the child about her true parentage. "Promise me she'll never know," she whispered. "Promise me she'll never carry the shame I carry." I promised, though it broke my heart to see my daughter in such pain. June 1953. Claire left Millbrook this morning for California. She has an offer of employment as a governess for a wealthy family in Los Angeles, a position I arranged through my connections. She made me swear on the family Bible that I would raise the baby as my own, that I would create a story that would protect her from ever knowing the truth about her illegitimate birth. I've prepared false documents, created a fiction about my brother and his wife dying in a car accident, leaving me to raise their orphaned daughter. It's the only way to give the child a chance at a respectable life. December 1953. Received a heartbreaking letter from William Carter today. He returned from Boston last month and has been searching frantically for Claire, trying to understand why she disappeared without a word. He's been to the house a dozen times, written countless letters, even hired a private investigator. I told him the same lie I told Claire, that she ran away with another man, that she never truly loved him. He didn't believe me at first, but when no trace of her could be found locally, he finally accepted that she had chosen to leave him behind. I've never seen a young man so broken. But it's for the best. Some secrets are too dangerous to reveal. January 1954. Little Claire is thriving. She's a serious baby, watchful and intelligent, with her mother's stubborn streak already showing. I've legally adopted her and created all the necessary paperwork to support our story. As far as the world knows, she is my brother's daughter, orphaned in a tragic accident. The truth is buried so deep that even I sometimes forget it's a lie. March 1965. Received an unexpected letter from Claire today, my daughter, not my granddaughter. She's married now, has taken the name Thompson, and lives in Los Angeles with her husband and 2 young sons. She never asks about the baby directly, but I know she thinks about her daughter every day. I've sent photographs over the years, always without return addresses or identifying information. It's better this way. The child, my little Claire, is happy, healthy, brilliant. She'll never know the sacrifice her mother made for her. Perhaps that's exactly as it should be. June 1970. Young Claire graduated valedictorian from high school today. She's been accepted to Boston University with a full scholarship to study law. She's everything her mother could have hoped for: intelligent, ambitious, strong. Sometimes I see her mother in her expressions, in the way she tilts her head when she's thinking, but she has no idea of the connection. The secret remains safe. December 1985. I am old now, and my time is growing short. Claire has become everything I hoped she would be: a successful lawyer, respected in her field, financially independent. She doesn't need to know the truth about her origins. The past is the past, and some doors are better left unopened. I've arranged for her to inherit this house when I die. Perhaps someday she'll find these writings, these letters I've kept hidden all these years. If she does, I hope she'll understand that everything I did, every lie I told, was done out of love. Love for her mother, love for our family's honor. May God forgive me for the pain I've caused in the name of protection." Claire closed the diary with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. Her grandmother hadn't been the cold, distant woman she'd always thought. Margaret had been carrying the weight of an impossible situation, trying to protect everyone involved while sacrificing her own relationships with both her daughter and granddaughter. But more importantly, the diary revealed the truth about William Carter. He hadn't abandoned Claire's mother. He'd been lied to just as completely as she had been. He'd spent months searching for her, never knowing about the pregnancy, never understanding why the woman he loved had disappeared from his life. Plot twist: neither William nor Claire's mother had betrayed the other. Margaret had orchestrated the entire separation to protect the family's reputation, destroying 2 lives in the process and condemning her own daughter to a life of exile and her granddaughter to a life built on lies. Claire was still processing the devastating revelations from Margaret's diary when she heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, she saw Theo climbing out of his pickup truck, carrying a wooden box that looked old and weathered. She opened the door before he could knock, her eyes red from crying, but her expression determined. "I found Margaret's diary," she said without preamble. "I know the truth now." "So do I," Theo replied gently. "That's why I'm here. After you asked me to leave, I went to my grandfather's house. I've been avoiding going through his things since he died, but I knew if there were answers to be found, they'd be there." He held up the wooden box. "May I come in? There's something you need to see." Claire stepped aside, and they walked to the kitchen where she'd been reading the diary. Theo set the box on the table and opened it carefully, revealing stacks of letters tied with the same blue ribbon as the ones Claire had originally found. "These are her letters to him," Theo said softly, "the ones your grandmother intercepted." Claire's hands trembled as she untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated March 1953, written in her mother's careful script. "My dearest William, I have the most wonderful news to share with you, though I confess it fills my heart with equal measures of joy and terror. I am carrying your child, my love. I know we had planned to wait until you returned from Boston to marry, but perhaps fate has decided our timeline for us. I pray you will be as happy as I am about this unexpected blessing, despite the complications it might create. I've been so sick in the mornings that Mother has begun asking questions, and I fear it won't be long before everyone knows our secret. Please write to me as soon as you receive this letter. I need to hear your voice, even if only through words on a page. All my love, forever and always, your Claire." The second letter, dated 2 weeks later, was more desperate. "William, why haven't you responded to my letter about the baby? I've written to you 6 times now, and your silence is becoming unbearable. Are you angry about the pregnancy? Are you having second thoughts about our engagement? I understand if you need time to think, but please, my darling, at least write to tell me what you're feeling. Mother has been acting strangely, asking pointed questions about my correspondence and watching me constantly. I'm so frightened and confused. Please don't abandon me now when I need you most. Your loving Claire." The letters grew increasingly frantic over the following weeks, until the final one, dated May 1953. "William, I cannot bear this silence any longer. Mother has told me that you've become engaged to someone else in Boston, that you never truly loved me, that our entire relationship was nothing more than an amusement for you while you were stuck in this small town. I want to believe she's lying, but your complete silence speaks louder than any words could. I'm leaving Millbrook tomorrow. I won't burden you with knowledge of your child or with any claims on your affections. She deserves better than a father who would abandon her before she's even born, and I deserve better than a man who could throw away our love so carelessly. I hope you find happiness with your Boston bride, even if it cannot be with me. Goodbye, forever, Claire." "He never got any of them," Theo said quietly, watching Claire's face as she read. "Not a single one." Claire looked up at him through her tears. The diary says Margaret intercepted his letters too. She did. Theo pulled out another bundle from the box. These are his letters to her, all returned unopened, marked addressee unknown. Claire read one dated December 1953. My dearest Claire, I've been searching for you for months, ever since I returned from Boston to find you gone without a trace. I don't understand what happened, why you left without saying goodbye, why you haven't responded to any of my letters. Your mother tells me you ran away with another man, but I will not believe that. The woman I fell in love with would never have done something so cruel, so completely out of character. Please, if you're reading this, if there's any part of you that still cares for me, write back. Tell me where you are. Tell me what I did wrong so I can make it right. I'll come to you wherever you are, and we can start over, build the life we dreamed of together. I love you more than my own life, and I always will. William. There are dozens of them, Theo said. Letters he wrote over the course of 2 years, trying to find her, trying to understand what happened. He never stopped looking. But he did stop eventually, Claire said, wiping her eyes. The diary mentions that he never married. Because he found her, Theo said quietly. In 1965, he hired another private investigator. By then, he had resources, connections, better techniques for finding missing people. He pulled out a business card from the bottom of the box. Pacific Investigations, Los Angeles. Written on the back in faded ink was an address. Claire Thompson, 1247 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. Married 1955. 2 children, David, 9, and Michael, 7. Claire stared at the card. He found her in 1965. Yes, but she was married by then, had built a new life, had children. The investigator confirmed that she seemed happy, stable, that her husband was a good man who knew nothing about her past. So my grandfather chose not to contact her? He loved her enough to let her be happy. He thought she had chosen her life, that she was better off without him bringing up painful memories. Claire felt fresh tears starting. They were both protecting each other from a truth they didn't even understand. Your mother sacrificed her happiness to give you a legitimate birth and a stable home. My grandfather sacrificed his to preserve her new life and family. Your grandmother sacrificed her relationship with both her daughter and granddaughter to protect the family reputation. And now, you're here, telling me all of this. Why, Theo? What's the point of dragging up all this old pain? Theo looked directly into her eyes, his expression intense and sincere. Because you deserve to know the truth about who you are and where you came from. Because your mother and my grandfather deserved better than the hand they were dealt. And because I'm falling in love with you, and I refuse to make the same mistakes they did. Claire felt her heart stop. What did you just say? I said I'm falling in love with you. I have been since the moment you walked into that library. I know the timing is impossible. I know this situation is complicated beyond belief, but I won't let fear or pride or other people's secrets keep us apart. Theo, Claire struggled to find words. We barely know each other. We know enough. We know that we connect in ways that don't make logical sense. We know that working together this past week has felt more natural than anything either of us has ever done. We know that the thought of walking away from each other is unbearable. But what if we're just caught up in the romance of their story? What if we're confusing our feelings for theirs? Then we'll figure it out together. But Claire, there's something else you need to know. Theo took a deep breath. William Carter wasn't my biological grandfather. Claire stared at him in shock. What? He was my father's business partner and closest friend. When my parents were killed in a car accident when I was 5, William took me in and raised me as his own son, legally adopted me, gave me his name, loved me like I was his blood. But we share no DNA. The implications hit Claire like a physical blow. So we're not related. No, we're connected by story, by the choices our families made, by the love and sacrifice that brought us both to this moment. But we're not bound by blood or by their mistakes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll give us a chance. Say you won't let their tragedy become ours. Claire looked around the kitchen, at the letters spread across the table, at the diary that had revealed so many secrets. For the first time since she'd arrived in Millbrook, she felt like she could breathe, like the weight of all those lies and half-truths was finally lifting from her shoulders. Final twist. Claire and Theo were connected by their family's tragic love story, but they had the chance to write a different ending, one based on truth, courage, and the determination not to repeat the past's mistakes. Claire sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything Theo had told her. The kitchen felt charged with possibility, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for her decision. "I've been so angry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "At my mother for leaving me, at Margaret for lying to me, at you for keeping secrets. But they were all just trying to protect the people they loved, weren't they?" "Love makes people do complicated things," Theo replied gently. "Sometimes the right thing, sometimes the wrong thing, but usually something that made sense to them at the time." "I have so many questions still. I want to know more about my mother, about what her life was like in California. I want to understand how she could bear to give me up, how she lived with that choice every day." "Then let's find out together," Theo said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "We can go to Los Angeles, try to find her family. We can piece together what happened to her after she left Millbrook." Claire looked down at their joined hands, thinking about all the choices that had led to this moment. Her mother's sacrifice, Margaret's well-intentioned deception, William's years of searching, Theo's honesty when it mattered most. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I've spent my entire adult life building walls, controlling every variable, making sure I could never be hurt the way I was when I thought my parents, died. This feels like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there's water at the bottom." "I'll jump with you," Theo said simply, "if you'll let me." "What if we're making a mistake? What if we're just caught up in the drama of their story and this isn't real?" "Then we'll figure that out too. But Claire, I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. It's not just the mystery or the family connection or any of that. It's you. The way you light up when you're solving a puzzle, the way you care so deeply about understanding the truth, even when it hurts. The way you've handled all of these revelations with such grace and strength." Claire felt tears threatening again, but for the first time in days, they weren't tears of anger or betrayal. "I've never been good at letting people in. I've spent so many years focused on my career, on being self-sufficient, that I forgot how to trust someone else with my heart. I'm not asking you to trust me with everything all at once. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that not everyone will leave you, not everyone will lie to you, not everyone will choose protecting you over believing in your strength." Claire thought about her mother's letter, the one where she'd written about hoping Claire would have all the things she couldn't give her. "My mother wrote that she hoped I'd have a wonderful life, full of love and laughter. I think she meant a life without shame, without secrets, without having to hide who I am or who I love." "And do you have that life?" Claire looked around the kitchen where 3 generations of Whitmore women had made impossible choices for love. Margaret had chosen duty over happiness. Her mother had chosen sacrifice over fighting for what she wanted. But Claire could choose differently. "I'm starting to," she said, squeezing Theo's hand. "I love you too, Theo. I probably shouldn't. It probably doesn't make sense, but I do." He leaned across the table and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was a kiss that tasted like truth, like new beginnings, like the love their families had been denied. "So what happens now?" Claire asked when they broke apart. "Now we write our own story," Theo said. "We find out what happened to your mother. We visit California and meet the family she built there. We learn everything we can about William and Claire's love story, not to live in the past, but to honor what they sacrificed. And then we decide what we want our future to look like, together." Claire smiled, feeling something unfold in her chest that she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right person, ready to build something real and lasting and true. "I'd like that," she said. I'd like that very much. 6 months later, Claire stood in the garden behind the Victorian house, planting roses in the spot where Margaret's diary had mentioned her mother once kept a flower garden. The house was no longer a burden to be sold. It had become home. She'd left her corporate law position in Boston to start a small practice in Millbrook, handling real estate transactions and family law, work that felt meaningful in ways her corporate career never had. The renovations were progressing slowly but beautifully, with Theo's help and his eye for preserving the house's historical character while making it livable for modern life. They'd found more letters hidden throughout the house, more photographs, more pieces of the puzzle that was her family's story. Their trip to California had been both heartbreaking and healing. Claire's mother had died 3 years earlier, but her stepfamily, 2 half-brothers and a stepfather who had loved her deeply, welcomed Claire with open arms. They shared stories about the woman who had raised them, showed her photographs of a life well lived despite the early tragedy, and most importantly, gave her a letter her mother had written but never sent. "To my daughter, if you ever find these words, I gave you up not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you too much to let you carry the burden of my mistakes. I hope you've had a wonderful life, full of love and laughter and all the possibilities I couldn't give you. I think of you every day. I have always loved you. Your mother, Claire." Now, as Claire knelt in the soft Vermont soil, she thought about the choices that had brought her to this moment. 3 generations of women, each making the best decisions they could with the information they had, each sacrificing something precious to protect the people they loved. She opened the first love letter she'd ever found, the one that had started this whole journey. But now she read it differently, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a love story that had finally found its proper ending. "True love doesn't disappear with time," she said aloud, speaking to the house where so many secrets had been kept and finally revealed. "Sometimes it just waits for another chance, in another generation." Theo appeared beside her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Talking to yourself?" "Talking to them," Claire said, gesturing toward the windows where afternoon sunlight created golden rectangles on the old wooden floors. "Telling them we'd got it right this time." "Think they approve?" Claire leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the absolute rightness of being exactly where she was. "I think they'd be happy that their story led to ours, that all the pain and sacrifice and lost years weren't for nothing." "What would you tell them if you could?" "That love wins eventually, that truth is always worth the risk, that sometimes the thing you're most afraid of losing is exactly what you need to fight hardest to keep." Theo kissed the top of her head, and Claire closed her eyes, surrounded by the scent of roses and the promise of all the tomorrows they would write together.
Your heart knows the way. Subscribe and follow the beauty.